venture capital, golden ticket, or giant Ponzi scheme?
Who wouldn't want a piece of that magical money showering pie? Let's get ready for Unicorn Porn, a podcast for founders who roll their eyes at phrases like "we're killing it" and "changing the world."
We riff about all the things you wish you could say out loud but can't or won't, like investor horror stories, founder mistakes, and bloated valuations.
The media has perpetuated this addiction to unicorn porn.
Nobody says if you take money, you have to constantly be raising money.
Before reality hits in Silicon Valley, companies exit.
I used to feel embarrassed that I wanted a lifestyle business.
Warning, these unfiltered conversations are highly opinionated, brutally honest, and politically incorrect. Please stop listening now if you're easily offended.
Unicorn Porn is brought to you by Lloyed Lobo, Wall Street Journal bestselling author and co-founder of Boast AI, and Melissa Kwan, co-founder and CEO at eWebinar.
This is Unicorn Porn, the show where we unravel the ugly truths behind the glittering facade of the startup world. I'm Melissa Kwan, your host, and with me is my partner in crime and co-host, Lloyd Lobo.
Let's get ready to rumble. We're breaking apart the facade of unicorn. So you want to grab a seat for this one. We're not holding back any punches. And actually to kickstart today, I had to steal my wife's t-shirt so I could represent the labyrinth of unicorn porn. This is Stanford University in the heart of Silicon Valley.
Well, today's episode is also about the star of our show, unicorns. So Lloyd, how do you feel about unicorns?
You know, I actually loved unicorns growing up, unrelated to the startup world. But my first job at a university was working for a funded startup. And my last job before I became a founder was working for a startup. Now, as much as I loved the chase and the dream of big vision, massive outcomes, what I also realized working for 3 startups back to back before becoming a founder is unicorn porn's close cousin, which is hustle porn, where you're working around the clock, you are not taking care of your health, you're not taking care of your family, nothing else. The work comes first and you're there late. And what hit me was before Alex called me to start Boast, I was working round the clock, right? My wife, she was a resident in Philly for at a hospital, and she was working 100 hours. And I was at the startup, venture-backed, and super stressful. I was running sales and marketing, and I was working till 8 or 9, maybe 10 sometimes every day. One week, I start going home at 6. Did that one day, did that the second day. The third day, I got an email from the CEO, who I was reporting to. And the email said, "Lloyd, I used to like it when you were in the office till 9 or 10. I used to like it? That would happen until last Friday. But these days, you're going home at 6. Your wife is a resident working 100 hours a week. What do you have to do? What better do you have to do at home?" And I just the floor left my feet. My parents were visiting town, and they live in Toronto, and I hadn't seen them in a year. And that's why I was going home at 6. That day when I went home, Alex called me and he said, "Man, I think we should do this startup." And I said, "Listen, I don't give a crap what we build as long as we build the company that we want to work for." And that's my story with the unicorn porn and how it all started. But what's your story? What's your take?
I mean, I have a love-hate relationship with unicorns in the sense that I used to really love them and admire them, but now I hate them for what I've seen them do to my friends, right? And let me explain. So I had 2 startups before eWebinar, and my first startup was an agency. That became my second startup, was my first product company. I didn't know how to build a product company. I was always bootstrapped, but I was bootstrapped because I didn't realize you could build companies on other people's money, like OPM, because I was from Vancouver, right? Vancouver, we're talking 14 years ago, right? There was no Y Combinator, right? There was none of this accelerator stuff. It was all new, right? And so I just wanted to build a business a traditional way because I didn't want to work for SAP anymore.
The traditional way, meaning the only way, which is make money,
Yeah,
keep customers happy.
But I thought that was the only way. Like, it didn't cross my mind that you could just go raise money. Like, people in Vancouver weren't really talking about that at the time, right? So in trying to build my second company, I just became so broke because I had, got a bank loan, got maxed out all my credit cards, borrowed money from my parents, and I couldn't find the product that people would pay for. Eventually moved to New York to try to grow this company. I was just kind of beating a dead horse at that time. So I go to New York to try to build this software, and everybody was like, "Oh, how much have you raised? Do you want any introductions?" I'm like, "What does that even mean?" So then I learned that when you build a startup, you raise money. But it was almost told to me like, if you raise money, then you have a permission to build a startup. Right? I'm sure like you've also kind of felt that way.
You are building something that is not a lifestyle business. If you raise money, you have the permission to build a venture scale company that could eventually be the next Google or Facebook or Amazon or something.
Yeah, but it was all new vocabulary, right? So I'm like brand new to New York, brand new to these communities, and I would go to startup events and that's all they would talk about. And then you would go to startup events where like maybe there was like one or two VCs there because they were sponsored, and everybody would swarm this VC. So I really learned about, raising venture money there. But you got to understand my mindset at the time. I was really poor from trying to make this work and still trying to float the team by taking side hustles and then funding the team. And so the idea of building a company using other people's money was like magical. Like
100%.
How do I get some?
100%.
So then what happens, right? You go to these pitch workshops, right? You meet with your friends and they give you a standard slide deck. And that's how you talk to venture capitalists. You build the slide deck. And so I think for a long time, I wanted to be a unicorn, because the first thing that a pitch workshop tells you is, how are you going to build this into $1 billion company? That's your presentation. So I was crafting these pitches that like I didn't really feel comfortable with. But the problem was I met with probably like 20 VCs. And then the problem was it wasn't really a great business. And I didn't really believe in that vision I was trying to sell. I just wanted to get the money, to get the check. So then I had to make money and, to float my own team. So I had to be profitable. So while I was trying to raise money, I eventually became profitable, and then I didn't need the money anymore. But through that experience, right, I was really in the startup scene. Like I really knew a lot of people that were doing that. So I knew a lot of founders that did raise venture capital. So it was really weird, right? Because I no longer needed the money, and then I had all the freedom. And then I saw that all my founder friends that did raise money was getting less and less freedom. They had fancy offices. They couldn't raise the next round. They were super stressed. They had to hit these growth rate numbers. Meanwhile, I left New York to travel full time because I was now profitable and calling all my own shots. So that's kind of the love-hate relationship where I used to adore them because I thought that's what I needed to be. And then when I didn't need them anymore, I saw what they were doing to my friends. Like you said, hustle porn, super stressed out, couldn't raise money, like vowed they would never take venture money again. And of course I have friends
and then go on to raise again.
Yeah, but the thing is I had friends that also exited, but very, very few, right? And I also saw how that kind of hustle culture that was bred from unicorn porn destroyed relationships.
Destroyed relationships, like personal health, everything else. No one on their deathbed ever said, I wish I worked a little longer. I wished I chased that unicorn dream. It's all about family and relationships. And I actually realized this. So old habits die very hard, right? I had only worked for startups. Now, the reason why I joined Alex and we started together was to build a company that we want to work for, because I was so tired of back-to-back toxic work environments driven by trying to meet promises that founders exaggerated to investors and then experiencing companies going under or losing the money or shutting down. But en route, the stress, like shit flows down the leg, was going from the founders to the execs to the rest of the team. And I always wanted to shield the teams that worked for me, but nonetheless didn't want to do that again. But what I realized is I hadn't really worked any other way. I was conditioned to do this. And so when we started Post, inadvertently, that was the only way I knew to work. And that's how I worked, like round the clock, neglected my family, neglected friends, work friends, and our customers became my tribe, became my community, kept running. I was never around whenever my wife went into labor. 3 kids, she goes into labor, I'm launching something else.
That's crazy.
In a different city. Friend calls me, be like, listen, your wife's in labor in the hospital, just get on the next flight and come, right? And so that was me. Meanwhile, my wife's paying the bills, did 2 startups that didn't work out, did, to pay the bills, did an events company where the co-founder ran away with $250,000, and suing him and paying lawyer fees, what we got back in installments didn't even feel like anything hit the bank. But nonetheless, was just running. And because that's the only way I knew to work. That was my conditioning. I had no other environment. I had no other switch. And then when we sold half the company to a growth equity fund in 2020, I remember crystal clear, my wife's like, listen, the kids are getting really frustrated. You're not spending any time with them. They're going to call you uncle. And I'm like, just a little while longer. If this deal goes through, I'll take everyone to Bora Bora. And she would say, nobody gives a crap about your Bora Bora. Kids are not going to remember you took them once a year to Bora Bora. I won't remember. They remember that you spend every day 5 minutes with them in the morning and the night for dinner. The compound interest on that is huge. You can't solve it. And realization hit me because that Bora Bora trip never happened. The deal went through, the money hit my bank. We booked everyone to Bora Bora. 2 days before Bora Bora, I get hospitalized for bilateral COVID pneumonia. My lungs were shot in the middle of Omicron. I'm in the hospital on oxygen. My wife's a physician at Stanford, not allowed in the room. They set up a 24/7 Zoom, and all I'm hearing is people cry. And I was delirious, and the doctors, like people would come in with spacesuits. They'd ask me, do you feel suicidal because of all the drugs they put in you and your oxygen levels are tanked, so you're delirious. And I thought to myself, what have I done? I chased this and chased it and chased it, and I got it. But if I'm gone today, I don't even get to enjoy it. I literally, my stress buster when it came to this hustle was drinking, smoking, eating garbage, which the stress, the drinking, the smoking, eating garbage tanked my immune systems, where my dad, who's 75 and had a triple bypass, was fine, and I get like so sick. I don't know, I won the Gene Pool lottery maybe. But that was a realization that when is enough enough? And now, over time, I've talked to many friends who've raised lots and lots of money, because I'm very public about this topic. The height was 2 people I respect a lot. One's the founder of a mental health startup that's raised $100 million. And he called me and said, can I speak with you? And I'm like, oh, maybe it's for my benefit. And he was in near tears. He said, bro, we've raised $100 million and we're perpetuating this concept of mental health and how we can fix the world. I am dying. I can't fix myself. I want to leave the company and run. Another person was the president of Wealthfront. He was the head of growth at Facebook. He said he face-planted and left Silicon Valley, Andy Johns, right? So I know so many people who've gone through this, burnt out, face-planted, and sometimes you have to go through that to realize, because I think it's a realization that no one can give you. You have to experience it.
But the thing is, like, I think about the issues that chasing unicorns creates, and it all starts from this twisted idea of this is what success is, right? Like, you read it on TechCrunch, Forbes, but what's that stat? Like, there's only 150 companies that have hit 100 million ARR. 150 out of how many startups, are
nearly 2,000,
founded, right? Like every year kind of thing, right?
Millions of startups founded, right? Maybe let's say hundreds of thousands. A unicorn, when the term came out in 2013, it was Eileen Lee from Cowboy Ventures. She talked about unicorns in a TechCrunch article as being so rare, like companies that achieve so much revenue and growth in such a short time that they get to $1 billion valuation, and that is as rare as finding a mythical creature like a unicorn. But you know what happens when you throw a big goal like that? Everyone want to achieve it.
Well, this is the problem. even if it wasn't meant to be painted as like, oh, this is the thing you should go for, it became that. And people like me who had no business chasing it, because there's no way I could even build a company to 100 million. I'm not ready or willing to put in the sacrifice. I'm just not. And there are people that will, but this is exactly what I mean by I hate what it did to my friends, because the idea of what you want and what you're willing to give is completely misaligned.
But you know what? Tell me that when you hit 10 million ARR, because people's mindsets also change, right? And so for us, it was, as much as I hated the hustle culture, that was the only way I knew to work.
Yeah.
And so we said, we'll bootstrap it. And you think that bootstrapping a company will not send you down this path of getting burnt out and hustling and killing your relationships? It's not the money. It's your hunger for the outcome. So if you want to chase a unicorn and you don't want to raise money, it's even harder. And so mentally we were working like this, but the reality is, so she wrote this article on unicorns 2013. It became this benchmark that everyone had to achieve. By 2015, I think there were already like 50 or so unicorns. And the 2015 articles were the unicorns are taking over. Acquiring talent has become hard, and companies are launching perk wars. Like, it was getting ridiculous. And during the pandemic, nearly 2 unicorns were created every day, minted every day. 1.5 unicorn to be precise. So coming out of the pandemic, I think, depending on CB Insights or Crunchbase, you had 1,200 to 1,900 unicorns. So what this media did is the media has perpetuated this addiction to unicorn porn. Before reality hits in Silicon Valley, companies exit, right? You bring in the next investor and the next investor and the next investor, blow up the valuation to unicorns, and before reality hits, the company has exited. But in reality, the world is run by horses, camels, and donkeys. The brick and mortar companies that are running the world are not unicorns, they're not venture funded, but that's what started to happen, right? And now, when you look at it, we're seeing more unicorns shut down or get downvalued or marked down than being created. We just saw Envision shut down. How does a company with over 100 million in revenue, valued at 1.7 billion a year and a half ago, shut down overnight?
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem also that I've seen is founders don't understand what taking the first check means. Like, when I went to New York, I was in my early 30s. A lot of people were younger than me. So it's not like taking a driver's license test, right? Nobody says, if you drive on the road, these are the things that you have to, these are the things you have to be aware of. Like, everyone's just like, you should go raise money, go raise money, go raise money. Do you think any founder has had this conversation we're having right now with me? Nobody says, oh, by the way, if you take money, you have to constantly be raising money. In fact, even 2 years after I was in New York, we were profitable, and all my friends were like, oh yeah, once I'm on the venture train, I can't get off. I remember asking my friend, why? Like, because I wasn't on that train. So nobody actually tells you why. So people raise money because they think, I want to get my idea going, or I don't have money, right? Like me, so I want to go and raise some money. And for some people, it is, if they're from Stanford, right? It's easier than other people. But then no one says, oh yeah, after the first million, you have to then do this, and you have to get 5 million, and then you have to get 10 million. You have to constantly build relationships with your VCs. Like, I learned all of that after the fact. And then I was like, oh man, like, thank God I bootstrapped. Because yeah, okay, fine. Like, I don't have all that extra money to spend, but you know what? Like, I call all of my own shots. I get paid more than them. I'm nomading. I don't have an office. I don't have to care about all my burn, right? Hiring, firing, and all that stuff, right? So I think it's a lot of founders don't get warned, especially when they're younger. And we're able to have this conversation because we've been in this for like 15, 20 years.
It's also a virtue of your environment. I have no friend in Silicon Valley that's not a startup founder or a startup exec or a VC. That is my environment. How did I become a founder? My relatives, my family members, nobody is an entrepreneur. They're all risk averse. Work till you're 65, climb up the ladder, retire. My first job was working for a startup founder in 2005. And in 2005, startups weren't a thing. So if you work for a small, obscure startup, chances are your next job is going to be that. So I went from being a cold caller to being in sales to being head of sales for startups. And because I worked for 3 founders, I became a founder. If your environment is a bunch of fit people, you'll be fit as well. If your environment is a bunch of startups who are hustling nonstop, you will feel compelled to do that as well. And so that was the environment I was surrounded by, right? And it's very, very hard to change, and sometimes the bubble has to burst for you. And what happened during the pandemic is very interesting, right? I think it's no different than 2008. Just maybe 1 or 2 dynamics changed, but nonetheless driven by one thing. VCs want to see a massive return on their investments. Why? Because they raise money from wealthy individuals and institutions. I'm an LP in 10 funds. If a VC doesn't show a markup on their investments on their portfolio, what does that signal to the LPs? That this fund is not growing the value of my investment. And VCs are built on raising the next fund before the current fund liquidates, right? They're always raising fund 2, fund 3, fund 4, and they're going back to the same LPs. If they don't show portfolio growth, how are they going to raise the next fund? They're not. And so as a function of that dynamic, founders have to keep raising because you're going to raise at a higher valuation. Nobody raises at a down round, not willingly. And so you're on the hamster wheel, then you're on the VC train. You got to raise every 18 months. You're convinced to spend to grow faster and then raise more money at a higher valuation and a higher valuation.
But then instead of focusing on your customers, building a sustainable business, you're building relationships with VCs and your founder friends so that you could raise the next round. You know, I asked one of my friends, he did go the VC route. He did exit for, 8 figures, but it was an okay exit, not a great one for the VC, but he didn't lose the money, right? And he said he would never raise money again. And I asked him why. He said he's like a coder turned CEO. Like he just grew into that seat because nobody was in that seat. And he said the most painful thing for him in that journey was that he couldn't make decisions for his customers, that he only made decisions for growth because that's what he had to do to raise the next round. And I never realized that. See, this is another thing that nobody tells you, right? He needed to get the growth, to get the number, to get the check. Otherwise his company will die. Like, and we're talking about raising at the next round, raising a higher valuation. Like, it's not just that you are literally dependent on a third party for the survival of your company, not the growth of your company, the survival. And all this just clicked for me in the last couple of years. And I've been in startups for like 15 years.
If you keep taking exogenous things to keep you afloat, it eventually becomes an addiction. Whether it's cocaine, whether it's venture capital money, right? Some of the best VCs I know, they do expect you to grow while keeping your customers in mind and maintaining customers in mind, meaning your customers then don't leave, high retention, right? Everyone is well-intentioned, but it's like juggling multiple balls. I gotta grow 2x to maintain this valuation, right? I think the VC math is the best companies, the most iconic companies that are venture-backed, grow triple, and then double. So then if you focus on growth, things are gonna break. I mean, we went from 30 people to 130 people in 8 months trying to grow fast, right? Things are going to break. And inevitably, it's likely your product or your customer relationships or something. And that's a very stressful environment. The other thing, what that does is founders who are likely first-time founders to take venture capital money or first-time venture-backed founders, although they're in the CEO seat or founder seat and they have more board seats and they have more control, they feel emotionally obligated to take the venture capitalist advice because here's this person keeping me afloat. If I just say no all the time, they may write off their investment and not fund me the next round. The other thing that people don't talk about, which you alluded to, is your friend had an okay exit. Let me break this down in terms of numbers. One of my best friends, his company is funded by Google. They are doing $75 million in revenue Series C company. They've raised $90 million. Guess how much each founder owns?
4 founders, 30%, 40% across all of them.
Each founder owns 5% of the company. So for them to have FU money, or the definition of FU money is ultra high net worth individuals, so 30 million liquidity.
Yeah.
How much is this company going to need to sell for nearly $1 billion? 600 million. How many 600 million to $1 billion exits? And if you're saying, okay, I'm going to sell for 600 million, then everyone's going to be like, we stretched this far, so let's go for the B. It's only a few clicks on the valuation. They would need to raise another round, so maybe they'd get diluted from 5% to maybe 4% or 3%. To make that FU money, they've struggled, grinded, dealt with everything over the last 10 years, sold for $1 billion, and walked away with 30 to 50 million FU money. Now I know, you and I both know, dozens of bootstrap founders who've capital efficiently, between 2-3 founders, built a company to 20, 30 million ARR and sold for 80 to 100.
Yeah.
And made the same kind of money while maintaining control and mental peace. So I think the key here is not building somebody else's definition of success, but rather figuring out what is your personal definition of success, how much money do you want in your bank account to fund that, and what is your purpose? If your purpose is, this problem won't let me sleep at night and I have to disrupt this industry, I need to build this. Like if this is my life's mission and I'm willing to go on this journey, then go on it. But don't bullshit yourself and be delusional that I am going to pitch VCs to stay afloat or just to get the first check in. I'm going to paint this vision that's unicorn. Because you know why? That lie ends after the first board meeting. I'm also a board member in 3 companies, one of them being public. So that lie ends after the first board meeting. What are you going to say? Okay, I took your money, and you know what? I took your money, haha, it's done. Now I'm just going to grow 50% or 40%. No, they're going to ask, why aren't you growing fast enough?
Yeah.
Where's this? Every 10 slider ends with up and to the right.
Yeah, hockey stick.
Yeah, where's this hockey
Where's
stick?
the hockey stick that you promised on your slide?
Yes, after the second board meeting, they want to know metrics. The optics are over. You have to show the metrics. Where's the hockey stick?
Also, like, people are like, oh, I got 2 years runway. 2 years goes by super fast.
You may have 2 years runway, but if you don't raise at a higher valuation at the end of 2 years, how does it keep the VC happy?
Hey guys, real quick. Think about how you found out about this podcast. Maybe you saw it on social or someone sent it to you. The only way this grows is by word of mouth. So if you're willing to help us out by sharing it with others you think would enjoy this podcast as much as you do, it would mean a lot to us. Whether that's writing a review, sharing a tweet, or telling your next door neighbors, that would be amazing. Thanks so much, and now let's get back to the episode. But speaking of lies, right? The other issue that I think is quite heartbreaking and current right now, at least for me, is seeing how this admiration for being a unicorn has perpetuated these massive scams. And we haven't heard the last of it. These are, they come out once in a while, and, whether it's glorifying the WeWork founder on Apple TV, or, the Uber founder, Super Pumped, also has a TV show that, they're glorifying these founders, but in a way where you're like,
or Theranos.
Yeah, or Theranos, but that is an outright scam. But there's these business idols, right, that have their own TV shows now, right? But it's almost positioned in a way that's like, I want to speak like that. I want to be able to swindle a VC like that. I want to be able to twist a story like that. So then more and more people are coming up with these narratives because maybe they think they can make a quick, either they think they can make a quick run for it, or they're actually delusional and sociopathic and think, I'm going to do this thing and take people's money. And I think it's heartbreaking because the people that lose are the employees, right? The investors, although it's, for me, it's like, well, investors have lots of money to lose and they're smart.
They can write it off.
Yeah, they can write it off. But, people that join the team that have options that will never, that they can never exercise on, or stock options they can never exercise on, the FTX collapse, right? It's the hunger, right? It's the hunger for billions of dollars. And then Forbes and all those magazines shines a spotlight on all these people. 2 years later, everything collapses.
You know why that is? Like, I think this is not a today situation. This is not a unicorn or tech situation. This is a media problem, and this is a I guess psychological thing with humans, even dating back to the newspaper. Negativity sells. People are interested and stay on negative content longer than they stay on positive content. Look at your own LinkedIn. Look at any social platform. They jam more and more negative content because it keeps people interested and keeps people hooked.
But what I mean is they shine a light on those guys at, like, when they're successful. They also report on them when they're not. But what I mean is the media creating this idolization of the billionaires.
Yeah, but all these guys are eventually seen as scamsters when they turn into glorified stories, right? And because people know that it's like they say, right? Like, this guy's toxic, but why are you dating him? He's like such an asshole, but you just can't
take my eyes off him.
Yeah, I can't take my eyes off him, right? It's like, you know this is bad.
Yeah.
But it's like an anti-hero. Also changed the world, also changed an industry, was an asshole. So people are more intrigued because the goody two shoes doesn't sell. That's the reality.
Well, in fact, in the show Super Pumped, which is about Travis Kalanick of Uber, the show starts with, "Are you an asshole?" Right? Like, he asks the interviewee that comes in, and then the guy's like, "Oh, I don't know. What am I supposed to answer?" And, of course, like, he's looking to hire people who are assholes to support his own narrative because he believes, and I don't know how true this is, but in the show, he believes that that's what is required to get him to where he wants to go. But that for me is a heartbreaking thing because these people at the end who they hurt are regular people that work for them or buy into their service or invest in their company. And some people, if they run outright scams, of course, they're going to jail. But, some people just shut down, right? Adam Noonan just shuts down, raises, how much did he raise? Like 300 million or something like that?
He raised 300 million from the same investors for the next project he's working on.
What the heck? But this is exactly the unicorn porn. It's like, oh, wait, that guy can lose billions of dollars next day, can get 200 million to leave the company and then raise more money from these really smart investors. I've lost all respect. He should not be getting more money.
Because he learned what not to do, and he tried to execute at such a huge level and failed. That means at least he can execute to some kind of skill.
That's what makes people think, oh, maybe I should be more like that, instead of building a sustainable business. And the thing is, some people are like the Adam Newmans of the world, and they get high off of it. The 99.9% are not like that.
I think there's a research stat that says to be an entrepreneur that's disruptive and changes the way the world sees and does things, you got to have some level of charisma and sociopathicness to you. And I think there's some stat like that. But the reality is, in every industry, whether it's advertising or whether it's Bitcoin, or the coaching industry, there's always, when there's something good, there's also people who come and take advantage of the system, and well-meaning people who are just, I guess, casuals. They can't tell the difference between founder or fraudster, right? There's a fine line between founder and fraudster. All the advice you get, accelerators, incubators, media, is saying, the only way you can raise money if you show a vision that takes you triple, double. That's hockey stick, right? And if you paint a vision that's so big that changes industries, that disrupts things. So then founders are conditioned that this is what I need to do to win the deal. Nobody's having the conversation that, do you really want to go on this journey? Do you know what it takes? Very few people have this conversation with you. So this media has perpetuated the addiction to unicorn porn. And it's gotten so bad that, just look at the pandemic and what happened, right? Interest rates were super low to cope with COVID, and coupled with nobody could transact in person, everyone had to go online. If you need to go online, if you're a brick and mortar store, you are likely buying a startup product. Zoom, Twilio, Shopify, their stocks boomed, right? Like through the roof. And then what happened? 2020, 2021 saw this boom. Looking at this, investors started investing in all kinds of startups. Nobody thought to themselves that this is a black swan event. Everyone thought the market exploded. No, you just roll forward a few years of the market and this is going to end. Now, looking at this, hedge funds like SoftBank and Tiger Global said, hey, the interest rate is nearly zero. Why leave my money in the markets and other things? Maybe through every recession and an event like this, an Airbnb, Uber comes out, and one will. Let's find that one. And it doesn't matter if the rest of our portfolio goes to zero. So they started aggressively investing in these companies, coming in, not doing due diligence or very little due diligence. When you got to invest, like, so Tiger Global, preceding the pandemic, had done 40 deals in venture throughout. And I think the stat is something like during the pandemic, they did like 400 deals. So imagine that. You go from doing 40 deals over your lifespan in venture, and then over 2 years, you do like something like 400 deals. So you think they're doing the best due diligence? Probably not. Things are getting missed. So overvaluing these startups, 2022 rolls around, interest rates go up, growth doesn't keep to the same level. If you haven't bought Zoom, Shopify, et cetera, in 2020, 2021, you're not going to. The market's crashed, valuations fell. You get companies like Envision shutting down. You got companies like Hopin literally going under, right, selling the assets. This is what the media does. This is the chase for greed. I'm sure 1 or 2 companies in the next 10 years will come out of that pandemic being the next Uber and Shopify and Airbnb, but we don't know.
Yeah, but that's the problem, right? It's like it's still creating this vicious cycle of more people going onto the train, right? And very few people winning.
That is the reality, that for everything great at that level, for everything disruptive, there's a reason why it's called disruptive, right? Disruptive innovation nonetheless, but it's called disruptive because while it leads to good things, the disruption that creates is also collateral damage. Employees, families, industries, other people. But the hope is that the greater good it eventually creates exceeds the bad or the carnage that it's left behind.
So what do you think is the solution here, right? Like how can founders avoid this unicorn fueled, like all these unicorn fueled problems for themselves?
You know, I'll start by giving my story on why I went on the chase, okay? So my wife's a very brilliant doctor. She got into medical school in second year of undergrad without MCATs. It's very rare. And she's now associate professor at Stanford, celebrated physician. I was a bumbling idiot going from startup to startup. And what was told to me that I would amount to nothing and live off her pay, pretty much. She's going to make hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I would need to have an advanced degree, like have a master's or a PhD, or be a physician to be worthy of her. And that actually hit me harder when my mom came and asked me that, I gave up my career to raise you. Did I not raise you right? Will you amount to nothing? And that hit me so hard, Melissa, that I'm like, you know what? The local maximum for the society I'm in, my wife, our families, is being a doctor is the epitome. I'm going to 10x that. Like, what is bigger than, like, what is a home, like, what is something that if any physician or any educated person can come close to? That's a unicorn, building a unicorn. So I went this journey chasing startup. And the toll it took on me ended up with me nearly dying of COVID when I actually had some liquidity. And then I realized. And so I think the key here is before you go on any journey, just write down, what is my personal definition of success? That's never money. Money is useless if it's a moving target. And what does it matter if money is your goal, you hit it, and then you say, okay, you know what, it was 1, now it's 5, it's 10, and then it's 50. And you're 65 and you're not functional. And so you go from the tax system to the hospital system. What good is that money? Money is only good if it buys you something, whether that's a lifetime of doing nothing in Bali or a lifetime of nomading the world, hanging around festivals. Money should buy you something. Write down that personal definition of what brings you joy. And it could be that what brings you joy is being a scientist in your basement pumping out innovations.
I mean, my thing is be unicorn, don't be unicorn, right? I don't think there's one way to build a business. There's no right or wrong way, right? Anyone that tells you different is like, they don't know what they're talking about. But there is a right way for you. And I don't think what people realize is how you choose to fund your company, like your funding decision, whether you bootstrap or whether you take friends and family money or family office or VC money, it is not just a financial decision. It is a lifestyle choice.
Or a bank loan.
It's a lifestyle choice, right? And what I mean by that, it's like, I bootstrap my company. So I have a remote team. I nomad. Everyone's everywhere. I call my shots, no schedules. I don't think I'm going to be able to do that if I took a VC check. I'm going to have an office, hire locally, like all those things that's going to change the way I want to live my life, right? So for me, it's similar to what you just said, is like, what are the non-negotiables in your life, right? And it's not like, I have to work in real estate. Like it's something more broad, right? It's for me, it's things like I have to have a remote team. I want to share my successes with my friends. I want to sell something that's 100% sold through the internet, no conferences, no live calls, like things like that, pretty broad, right?
All around freedom.
Yeah, all around. For me, it's all around freedom. And the career path I choose and the funding path that I choose has to take me closer to those things and not farther away. And I don't think enough people think the check means lifestyle, not just finance.
Nobody thinks that. And it was an eye-opener. Alex, my co-founder, always knew it, right? Because we had no offices from the get-go. We're like, if we can't go into the office, we can't force others. We wanted to build a company we wanted to work for. We bootstrapped to 10. That didn't mean we didn't want to build the biggest possible company we could. We grinded, we hustled hard. But the reality is the money you take is a lifestyle choice. And the who you take it from is also a lifestyle choice, right? So you could take it from a bank, you could take it from a private equity, you could take it from a growth equity or a VC. And the type of VC also, where they're from also matters, right? So you may take money from a tier 1 high growth venture capital firm and convince them. And now you got to show a different growth pattern than maybe you take money from a venture capitalist in Europe and their historical portfolio value, exit value has been like on average 200 million and a different path. So the financial decision you're making by taking money is actually a lifestyle decision, and nobody sees that. I mean, our life just changed, right? Imagine going from, now we took a growth equity money, we sold 52%, me and Alex liquidated, but nonetheless, we had bootstrapped this company. We own nearly 40% of it. And we put money and we brought in partners on the board who want to now see a return on their money, right? And that means let's grow. No growth means no increase in enterprise value. So you have to grow. And it is a lifestyle choice because now you have another person at the table and you have to respect their opinion. If they own a portion of your company, and typically VCs will own 10 to 30% of your company by the time you're exited, and if it's growth equity or PE, maybe up to 50+%, you have to make a decision together. And if you're not aligned, same values alignment, if it's like, oh, you know what? I want a nomad. Well, if you wanted a nomad and work 4-hour work weeks, then why did you con them into giving you money? Because they want to see their value grow. And I think the data is very important. Most people don't think about this. Most VCs at the bottom of the barrel want a 3x on the valuation, right? At the bottom. At the top, they want 100x.
Yeah.
3x. So you raise at a 10 million valuation, 30 million, lots of exits. You raise at a 50 million, bottom of the barrel, 150, some exits. When you raise at 150, 200, 300 valuation, are $1 billion deals happening every day? No. So what are you signing up for? You're signing up for $1 billion outcome or an IPO. You better believe that. Talk to people who've gone on that journey and what their life every single day is. visualize yourself in their shoes, and then ask yourself, take a weekend trip maybe by yourself or with your co-founder and literally whiteboard pros and cons. Is this something you guys want to do? Because if you don't want to do it, don't delude yourself into thinking that we're going to take the check and hope it all works out, because the charade will end at the next board meeting.
I mean, this reminds me of a story when I was trying to raise money when I was living in New York. One of my friends who did take VC money, he told me, and I didn't fully understand it at the time, but he said, never take money from someone with misaligned values. Meaning, if you want to build a small company, don't take money from a guy who wants to build a big company.
It's a
Otherwise, your
crime.
life will be very hard. And I didn't fully understand that, because he's like, you guys are always going to be misaligned and your life will be very difficult. So that's one story. And the other story, as you were talking about the math, so we launched on Product Hunt as a marketing tactic when we started eWebinar. And we were like on top 3 on a Tuesday, which was like a big deal for Product Hunt. And I get I get all these emails from VCs, because that's where they're scouting deals as well, from the newsletter.
100%.
And I took a call with this guy because he was like a founder friendly. He was an entrepreneur. Now he's got, his own kind of VC fund, family office. And I asked him, what kind of return are you looking for? Right? That's the first question I ask. And he's like, well, like 3 times. And I'm like, oh, I guess, like I said to him, like I said this out loud because I was thinking, I was like, I guess I can do 3 times. He's like, no. I'm looking for 3 times. You still have to do 100. Like your company still has to, because it's so early, your company still has to exit for 100 times. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, this guy's an idiot. And I just like ended the call.
He's looking for 3 times. That's bottom of the barrel, right?
That's across all the companies, not my company. So he corrected me because I didn't fully understand the math.
Yeah, and so that, how many founders ask that question? Because the media has put investors on a pedestal. And so it's like this pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and you got to chase it. And so nobody asked the hard questions. The other thing you should ask, so the one was talk to people who've gone on that journey and what it's like, and vision yourself in that shoes, and go out for the weekend, disconnected from everything, and chat with your co-founder and see if that's a journey you want to go on. The other thing is like back channel as many references as you can. Companies they funded, companies they and succeeded, and companies they funded that failed. People show up when everything is on the up and up. How you show up when things are on the down and down speaks hugely of your character. So I think those are 2 important things. And then look at other viable options. I mean, the math. Everyone wants to be this anomaly. Zuckerberg, Bezos, Dharmesh Shah from HubSpot, Jeff Lawson at Twilio. Why are you comparing yourself to the anomalies? Were you, look at yourself. Were you, through your entire career, an anomaly somewhere?
Don't start there.
Yeah.
You can aspire to it, right? But don't start
You
there.
may end up there, but, don't compare yourself to the anomalies. You may, but if you never have had success being an anomaly, don't just hope and assume that you'll be there. It's a long freaking slog. You may get lucky and that long slog doesn't end up being long, like Instagram, and you might get acquired for a couple billion. But the reality is it's going to be hard, and you got to make sure that this is the journey you want to go on, or else you're just living a lie, and then at the 2nd round, 3rd round, it's just going to be miserable for you. And so while you're doing that, look at other options, right? Because again, we talked about the math. You know how much you have to sell for at each round. You also know that if you raise at anything north of 100 million valuation, your benchmark is now selling for hundreds of millions, if not into billion plus or IPO, right? So you know what that journey is. We walk through the math of how much you will own. Look at all the public, the data is so public. Look at all the public SaaS companies and public startups and see at IPO what the founders own of the companies.
Yeah.
I gave you the math of a company with 75 million ARR where 4 founders at Series D raised 90 million, each owns 5%. Right? If you raise at pre-seed, seed, Series A, Series B, Series D, in that range, right? 5 to 10% each founder will own.
And that's if you're lucky enough to get to the IPO, right? Like most
Yeah.
people don't get there.
you may have an exit, right? Or you may shut down like Envision. But nonetheless, if you're going to own 5-10% of this company, wouldn't you be better off maybe not going to disrupt? If your personal definition of success is, I want to just do nothing for the rest of my life, or I want to go play MMA, or I want to go retire in Bali, farming or swimming or surfing or whatever it is, then pick a product that you know you can get to 5-10 million in revenue, make it profitable. At the very least, you'll have freedom, you will be profitable, and you'll take huge sums of cash from the company. And magic happens once you're 10. You can sell it to a private equity, growth equity firm, maybe not for 100x, but maybe for 8 to 10x. And it'll still be life-changing money. Your life, unless you're into booze, babes, and blow, and you want to be the next Dan Bilzerian, the next extra million doesn't change your life materially.
Is that your one hot take for today?
I think my one hot take for today, and I never thought about this way until you brought it up, is your funding choice is a lifestyle choice. So figure out first, what is the lifestyle I want to live before you go and chase the type of funding you take and who you take it from.
So I think my hot take, I didn't make this up. My friend Greg Head did, or our mutual friend Greg Head did. I always remember this. He says, before you play the game, know what game you're playing. And I think it just encapsulates everything that we talked about. It's like, play the game, don't play the game, but just know what the rules are before you get in.
That's it for today's episode. See you on the other side.
If you enjoyed this episode, we hope you'll hit the subscribe button to the Unicorn Porn podcast on your favorite podcast app. Head over to our website, UnicornPrn.com, to see the show notes of every episode. Unicorn Porn is spelled UnicornPrn. That's UnicornPrn without the O. You can also join our mailing list to be notified of new episodes or when we have hot gossip to share. We promise to only share things you'll actually care about.
If you have topics you want us to rip apart, perhaps you got something you always wanted to say but didn't have the cojones to do it, we'll do it for you. Just connect with us on LinkedIn, Lloyed, Lobo, and Melissa Kwan.